I thought his biggest problem is what I sent to you yesterday, which is that his internal clock is now a sundial. And it's just, I mean, the guy, his average time to throw was like 3 seconds, which is generally where his is in his career. But his average depth of target was under 4. It's like, how can you possibly hold the ball this long without going anywhere with it?
A sundial. That's how the analysts on Check the Mic described Deshaun Watson's internal clock right now. Not a hot take, an actual number. His reported average time to throw was around 3 seconds, and he still only pushed the ball about 4 yards downfield on average. So here's what I want you thinking about for the next few minutes. If the numbers, the contract, and the team's own long-term plan all raise the same question, why does Todd Monken himself keep calling this competition too close to call? Comment your prediction. I'll give you mine at the end.
I think starting Deshaun Watson would be a waste of everybody's time, organizationally. Now, sometimes, you know this, Dan, sometimes you have to start the veteran because you want to keep other veterans happy. You want to send the wrong message. And, someone like Jerry Jeudy would say, why are we wasting a year of my career by trying to figure out what's going on at quarterback? If it wasn't close, as you said.
Right.
I was at practice. I saw a lot of mistakes from Deshaun Watson. I don't know if he's gotten better in the last 2 weeks since I was there, but it was a lot closer in practice than it was in the preseason game. I would start Shedeur Sanders, try to start Shedeur Sanders if I was the Browns. And frankly, just going organizationally, I'd rather start Dylan Gabriel than Deshaun Watson, because I just think that this is not about 2026. They're going to be bad. They're going to be in the Arch Manning, CJ Carr, Darren Mensah, John Mateer sweepstakes. That's just what's going to happen.
That's Kevin Clark on First Take. And he's not even making a Shedeur versus Deshaun argument anymore. He's making a what is this team actually building toward argument. To me, that's less a shot at Watson's talent than a challenge to the whole premise of playing him at all.
I just wonder if his name wasn't Sanders and we talk about him differently. I don't know another young quarterback who's been set up for success more than Shedeur Sanders has been. You beat out Dylan Gabriel, you beat out a Deshaun Watson who's past his prime, and he hasn't been able to do that definitively.
Myron Medcalf closed the segment with that, and it's worth sitting with. Not because it's an outrage take, because it's a fair one. So let's actually lay out where this thing stands with real numbers instead of vibes. The Browns will have to name a starter before they open the regular season at Jacksonville on September 13th. That part's not in dispute. What is in dispute is who that starter should be, and Todd Monken himself has publicly called this competition too close to call as recently as this week. Quick recap of where the actual scoreboard sits after one preseason game. Watson went 11 for 15, 126 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but he did lose a fumble. Sanders came in for the third quarter and went 6 for 11, 79 yards, with 1 interception on an overthrown ball he later admitted was on him. And here's the uncomfortable part for the Sanders argument. The Bears game didn't actually prove Watson should be benched. He completed better than 70% of his passes, led 2 scoring drives, and didn't throw the ball to the other team. Sanders had the bigger downfield numbers, but he also threw the interception that ended one of his drives. That's exactly why Monken isn't treating one stat as the whole answer.
I think the Browns' quarterback situation can be summed up in one statistic, which is average depth of target right now. Deshaun Watson, I talked about before, 3.8 in this game. Dylan Gabriel, the thing that was wrong with him as a rookie was the guy would not push the ball down the field anywhere. He could actually, they were sending him out there, trying to get him to dink and dunk, and he was okay at it. Now, the problem was, if you're going to have that level of big play averse, you need to be really efficient and can't make mistakes, right? He was doing that and being pretty efficient, and then he would make a big mistake. You're like, do you have any idea how much dink and dunk one bad mistake offsets? You basically need to be perfect. He still looked pretty much like that guy. Shedeur Sanders, so his average depth of target, 5.8. So it's two yards better than Deshaun. And then Shedeur Sanders, an average depth of target of 9.9.
Read those 2 numbers back one more time. Watson averaging 3.8 yards downfield per throw. Sanders at 9.9. That's a huge difference in how aggressively they attack the field in this specific game. Watson operated much closer to the line of scrimmage, while Sanders pushed the ball farther downfield. But here's the catch. Aggressive doesn't automatically mean efficient, and Sanders' one big mistake came on exactly that kind of downfield shot. And at least one of the analysts breaking down the film sees a real pattern here, not just one bad series. Watson's issue in this specific outing wasn't horrific decisions with the ball. It was barely making a decision at all. Hold, check it down, take the safe 5 yards. The question worth asking is whether that conservative approach survives when a regular season defense disguises coverage, brings real pressure, and forces him to make throws outside the structure instead of comfortable checkdowns against a backup-heavy preseason look.
My point being that all 3 of these guys bring massive negatives to the table, right? But one guy is at least bringing something positive to the table to offset that. So why would you not go with that guy going forward?
That's the actual film grading conclusion, not a fan take, not a hot take, a guy who watches coaches' tape breakdowns for a living. Nobody's saying Sanders played clean. Nobody's saying any of Cleveland's 3 quarterbacks played well. The argument is just that one of them is failing in a direction that might actually turn into something, and 2 of them are failing in a direction that just turns into more of the same. Here's where the organizational case gets impossible to ignore.
Deshaun Watson in the last year of his deal. He has an enormous dead cap even after this. The media said, hey, would you be open to signing an extension? Let me stop you right there, media. Deshaun Watson is not going to be offered an extension in Cleveland. This era is over in January.
This is where who's better right now becomes a bigger organizational question. 2026 is the final scheduled year of Watson's current contract, and unless Cleveland unexpectedly re-signs him, he's headed toward free agency after this season. So if the Browns move on, every 2026 snap becomes an evaluation of a quarterback who isn't expected to be part of the next phase, a very different calculation from giving those same snaps to a guy who's already under contract for the future. And this isn't a secret or a hunch, it's public record. Watson signed a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million deal back in 2022, and 2026 is year 5. The Browns have repeatedly structured that contract to create salary cap flexibility, and owner Jimmy Haslam himself called the whole trade a big swing and miss, publicly accepting responsibility for it alongside co-owner D. Haslam. When the man who signed off on the deal is on record calling it a mistake and asking to be held accountable for it, that tells you how dramatically the organization's own view of this era has shifted.
As long as you're wasting time, with 17 games of one of them that's probably not going to be on the team going forward, which one is giving you any kind of upside right now? Deshaun Watson, the worst thing that could happen is he plays competent football this year for multiple reasons. Number 1, if he wins you some games, you're taking yourself further down the draft order. Number 2, if he plays well enough that you actually have to consider him going forward as an option, that's a catastrophe based off his career so far. So why even give him the option, right? Play Shedeur, he's not costing you anything, and maybe he's your backup long term.
There it is, from a completely different show, completely different tone. Both arguments point in roughly the same direction, even if they're not identical. If Watson isn't part of the long-term picture, Sanders gives Cleveland something worth actually evaluating this season. And that's the more honest way to put it. Clark's argument and this one aren't word for word the same take, but a hot take debate show and a stats-obsessed grading service, 2 operations that couldn't be more different in how they cover football, are both raising the same basic question. What exactly does the organization get out of playing Watson meaningful snaps this year versus finding out what it actually has in the guy who might still be here in 2027? And it's not just the national voices saying this out loud either.
The one part of the recipe that smells a bit like rat farts is, hey, we're going to play 2 quarterbacks this year. That really is the thing that could take you from a 7 or 8 win team to a 4 or 5 win team.
That's the local Cleveland station, and I'll be honest, that's my favorite line in all this reporting. Splitting reps between 2 quarterbacks all season could muddy the long-term picture and potentially hurt offensive rhythm, because neither guy ever gets to build real chemistry with the offense over a full stretch. That's not a hot take about Watson or Sanders individually. That's a structural concern about the entire plan, according to people who cover this team every single day. Think about every offense you've ever watched actually click. It's rarely just one great player. It's timing, built over dozens of reps with the same guys running the same concepts over and over until it's automatic. Split that quarterback room down the middle for months and you're not really building anything. You're just running 2 half-finished experiments at the same time and hoping one of them accidentally works out by December. So with all of that on the table, here's what's actually at stake this week.
This might be the biggest week of Shedeur Sanders' life. And I know that's a tad dramatic. I recognize that me saying this might be getting a little off field here, but this is the biggest week of Shedeur Sanders' professional life because he has to absolutely kill it this week, not only in practice and the joint practice with the Bills, but then in the preseason game. He just absolutely has to light it up.
That's Daryl Reuter, cited on 92.3. And dramatic or not, he's not wrong about the stakes. Whatever you believe about how this competition has actually been run, the calendar doesn't care. Jacksonville is coming on September 13th, whether the Browns are ready to name a starter or not, and every practice between now and then either builds Sanders' case or buries it. There's also the joint practice against Buffalo's actual starters on August 20th, 2 days before the game itself. Sanders and Watson are both expected to split first-team reps against Buffalo's starting defense in that session, and coaches get a controlled look at both quarterbacks before the preseason game even kicks off. That tape doesn't lie the way a scripted quarter-by-quarter preseason rotation can. If Sanders wins that joint practice clearly on Thursday, it's a lot harder to bury that story under one shaky interception from Chicago. If Watson wins it instead, that's a real data point in his favor heading into Saturday. So here's my answer to the question from the top. The Bears game didn't prove Sanders should start. It didn't prove Watson should start either. What it did prove is that the Browns have 2 very different quarterback profiles on their hands. One a veteran entering the final scheduled year of his contract, the other a young quarterback Cleveland still needs to evaluate before it can plan around him. If the organization genuinely believes Sanders is part of its future, the numbers make that decision harder to keep putting off. If it doesn't, the same numbers barely matter. That's why Buffalo matters so much. Sanders is scheduled to start Saturday, and both quarterbacks are expected to get real first-team reps against Buffalo's starters in Thursday's joint practice first. If Sanders takes advantage of that opportunity, Cleveland's case for going with him gets a lot stronger. If Watson clearly outplays him again, the Browns have an easier argument for sticking with the veteran a little longer. So maybe the decision doesn't add up yet. Maybe that's exactly the point, and maybe that's why Monken keeps calling it too close to call instead of just naming a starter today. The numbers have raised the question. Buffalo is where Cleveland gets its next real answer. Alright, that's where things stand heading into Buffalo. Drop your prediction below, smash that like button, subscribe so you catch the verdict when it actually comes down, and send this to the one friend in your group chat who still thinks this is a coin flip. See you in the next one.